What is a popular movie that you really dislike? The Dark Knight. Heath Ledger was absolutely amazing. But the whole film just felt like a high-budget action thriller rather than a Batman movie. I feel like a Batman movie needs to have a certain tone to it. Sort of a gothic dark tone that I just didn't feel with this film. I also couldn't take Christian Bale's Batman voice seriously. With actors like Pattinson and Affleck, they actually seem like they're talking in a mysterious yet intimidating way. But Bale just sounds like he's trying to hard ... That's just my take though. Oppenheimer, I actually loved most of the actors in the movie. And the performances were pretty great. But the movie is a long drawn-out narrative mess. It doesn't tell the story in a satisfying way. And by the end of it you just want it to be over because it's so long and poorly structured. I also didn't care for most of the shots that are literally right up against people's faces. On the whole, I think it was way overhyped. I was actually happy the movie ended, and I don't think I'll ever revisit it. Every Fast and Furious since the fourth one, second Avatar. Everything Marvel has made 2018 onwards has been shit. Every John Wick after the first one, all Supermans, Dune, Titanic, every Die Hard except for the one that came out in '88. Expandables, Terminator, Rambo after First Blood, Toy Story after the first one. I can go on and on and on. Basically every franchise that has like 5 versions of the same story being forced down our throats. Recent superhero movies, too many. Just too many, and too many bad boring movies. Also anything David Lynch, in Sorry. I find him to be awfully pretentious. Twin Peaks was pretty good and Blue Velvet. But other than that, I find his use of surrealism to be disengaging. F-tier I'm not hating on surrealism. But I do believe enough of it leads to the feeling of being weird for the sake of being weird. Silence of the Lambs. The grand finale isn't about the main villain we've been focused on. Not much actually happens. And none of the symbolism and imagery is really carried as enough of a through line to be memorable. It's some blips of good acting, that's it. I respect it for originating a character archetype. But later movies did way better things with that character type. Cabin in the Woods? Yes. I get that it was satire. Key of the genre. It played off of tropes everyone already knew were tropes and had already been parodying for decades. Yet everyone thought it was some sort of fresh take on how to make a horror parody. I'll never understand why the internet thinks it's some kind of masterpiece. I generally enjoy whatever I'm watching in the moment. I might look back after the fact and think, kinda dumb or NKT that great, but mostly, I don't hate movies. I don't know how popular it really was. But I hated Yesterday, the movie about what if the Beatles suddenly never existed. I could go on and on, but that movie drove me crazy. It Follows. I don't understand why people are so crazy about it. It felt disjointed, like someone trying to explain a dream to you. Meaningful and detailed to the filmmaker. Vague and meandering to the audience. I didn't find it scary or compelling at all, and I left absolutely baffled that so many people rave about it. I've always had a soft spot for psychological thrillers. Inception totally had me hooked with its mind-bending layers. However, went to see Tenet with high hopes and walked out so confused I couldn't tell if I loved or hated it. Still puzzles me to this day, and not in the good way Inception did. The Fast and the Furious movies, like 1995 of Marvel, Avatar and John Wick, are all pretty mediocre average to me. Doesn't mean I can't or haven't enjoyed them. But I do not understand what makes them so great in people's minds. On writing and dialogue alone, all of these movies are like a 4/10 at best. Gladiator. Most disappointing and dissatisfying ending I've experienced. If it ended by Commodus realizing that he had become Caesar, and then Maximus was put to death, it would be so much better. That bread and circus's feel-good ending of Maximus killing Commodus is just such narrative shit. Lady Bird. I get it is a cult indie movie different than others, that passes a smart message to the public. But I just don't like it, not because it is slow, or nothing happens at all, or because it's not crazy like those generic movies. It's just a preference. I'm just not a fan of it. Home Alone. I can't stand it every goddamn year around Christmas. It's not funny. It's not heartwarming or entertaining, it's annoying and a little scary 'cause the kid's insane. Though everyone played the part well, and that I will admit I just don't find it funny and never have. Raising Arizona. Ghostbusters The Big Lebowski. Raising Arizona in particular, people are so emphatic about how funny it is. Watched it twice just to make sure I wasn't missing anything. Yeah, it wasn't funny to me. People get pissed when say it wasn't a good movie. Star Wars. The entire series. Boredom vibe. If I have to tell you which part in the series, or in one of the spin-offs or episodes is the best, I'd say the best part was the time I still had popcorn in my mouth. Then, I'll just drift into sleep. Batman Begins. Watched it yesterday. This is my first DC movie and it was terribly paced. Very fast cuts. The plot had good potential but terribly executed. It all seemed so rushed. I really didn't expect a Nolan movie to be this disappointing. I'll probably get some heat for this. Both new Dune movies. Even though they both run for over 2 hours each, it just feels rushed and unfinished. It's not a story that does well on the big screen, due to its time frame limitation. I watched the first Harry Potter movie a couple of years ago. Found it boring and childish. Didn't watch the other ones. I thought I could give the upcoming series a try, but I don't want to support J.K. Rowling in any way. Interstellar. Good contender for the most stupid, disappointing ending of all time. Love transcends time and space. Fuck off. This was supposed to be semi-hard science fiction, not some sappy tear-jerk feel-good movie. Thought of another one, Gone with the Wind. White along, and when I watched it I was shocked by how much Scarlett was a total bitch. I don't get why it's considered one of the greatest movies ever. Titanic, the real story, is much more interesting than this made-up, unlikely love story. Technically, the special effects and visuals are great. It's the whole romance story that just loses it for me. Pan's Labyrinth. I watched it in the dark, and in the end I was just WTF was this garbage about? A few years later I was surprised by how well it is popular and recommended in the internet. I'm a big fan of historical WW films and TV shows. Looked forward to Oppenheimer, as most of the movies I go to have usually one or two people there. Haha. Thought it was the worst movie. Step Brothers. God-awful movie that I would have turned off 7 minutes in if I hadn't committed to a friend to watch it. Horrible. I had to work to find anything about that was likable. I like a lot of the Marvel franchise, but could never get into the Captain America movies. I don't know why anyone finds that character appealing. He is the definition of vanilla. Avengers, all films. They don't feel like real movies, but more like advertisements for Marvel's geek stuff. Funko Pop, toys, clothes and act. They're just soulless. This is a recent one, but Challengers was hot trash. Awful editing, soundtrack, and storyboarding made what could have been an okay movie absolutely excruciating to watch. Star Wars. Pick any of them. They're like cheap spaghetti westerns, only without Clint Eastwood and unsuccessfully trying to hide bad plots behind CGI. Dances with Wolves. I haven't been able to watch a Kevin Costner movie since. Also, it was the last time I took a movie recommendation from anyone. Pulp Fiction. Honestly, I just got bored. It felt very nonsensical, and I found it hard to get invested as I didn't find the plot that engaging. Midsommar, one of the most boring excuses for a horror movie since Paranormal Activity. And at least it looked nice, unlike Paranormal Activity. E.T. I took my baby sister to see it. Yeah, I'm old, and both walked out of the theater going, I don't get why everyone loves this movie. Boondock Saints was pretty bad for me, but some of my feelings about it are probably because the person who recommended it overhyped it. The Silence of the Lambs. That fucking movie is just about the most toxic kind of transphobia out there trying to pretend it's feminist. Unglorious Bastards. kinda feels like the plot is lackluster and meaningless, and the movie is single-handedly carried by Christoph Waltz. Oppenheimer found it to be too boring for the type of film it was. I usually like longer dramas and thrillers, but it was just boring. I thought of another, and it's probably very controversial based on the sentiment I've seen since its release, Joker. I was bored. I liked Titanic the first time I watched it, but it's not worth a rewatch like something like The Office. Titanic was just so simple. Everything Everywhere All at Once was utter garbage. Probably one of the worst things I've ever seen. And it was sulfur monoxide long. The Pursuit of Happiness. Shitty father puts his own life goals and ambitions ahead of his son's love and affection. Dark Knight. Thought it was okay, but not the masterpiece people make it out to be. Heath Ledger was good, but whatever. This recent one, Everything Everywhere All at Once, I can't get more than 20 minutes into it without turning it off. Slumdog Millionaire. Just a standard romantic comedy. And why were they playing for dollars on Millionaire in India? This is the most safe threat I've seen in my life, man. The real tea is that Princess Mononoke is Miyazaki's worst. I'll probably catch shit for this, but Forrest Gump wasn't my taste at all. I've always found it pretty boring. All of the MCU films except the first 3 X-Men especially dislike the multiverse nonsense. Enough already. Office Space movie isn't funny, yet everyone creams themselves about it like it's the best comedy movie ever.